Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into SEC Nightly, the nightly show dedicated to the top news and notes from the nation's top conference. As always, I'm your humble host, Brooks Austin, and on tonight's show, we will be talking about the chances of Joe Burrow potentially pulling an Eli Manning and refusing to play for the Cincinnati Bengals, whether or not that is true, the merit behind those reports out of ESPN and whatnot, in Dallas area out there in Texas. We'll also talk about Mel Kiper's latest NFL mock draft. 15 players, 15 from the SEC are involved in that latest mock draft from the big-haired NFL draft wizard. And, we'll talk about whether or not the SEC could potentially, man, this is happening a lot lately, been dropping the music on you, whether or not potentially the SEC could be in store for a down year. The FBI came out today, not the FBI, the FPI, the Football Power Index rankings came out today, and only two teams were ranked inside the top 9. Georgia right there at the top 10, at the 10th ranked position in the FBI. Texas A&M sneaking there a little higher than most people would probably imagine. So we'll be talking about those again. For those just joining in on tonight's show, this is SEC Nightly. We do this Monday through Friday, starting at 9 p.m. typically. Last night we went a little bit later. Some Tuesday nights we go a little bit later. But SEC Nightly, the nightly show dedicated to the top news and notes from the nation's top conference. And with that, we'll drop them. We appreciate you guys for being here. Before we get into tonight's show, we will have to ask you to support the show, however and wherever you found us. Give us those thumbs ups and whatever it is. However, if it's a 5-star review and rating on the podcast platform or a subscribe over there on the YouTube page, however you found us, we would appreciate it if you show us some support. Thumbs up over there on Facebook as well. Let's get into this Joe Burrow topic, though, man. It started just a couple of days ago when Burrow was asked about the chances that he would end up there in Cincinnati and what it was going to end up looking like come draft time, and whether or not he had some leverage, right? Whether or not he had the ability to, find a way out of playing there in Cincinnati. And he had a rather cryptic comment and quote to respond to that, said, quote, "I do have leverage. The Bengals have their process and I have my process. We haven't even gotten to the NFL Combine yet. There's a lot of things that could happen leading up to the draft and a lot of information still left to be gathered." Just a little bit of breaking news, not breaking news, but a final there in Athens. Georgia tops Auburn. So they take out the number 14 team in the country. So Georgia, out of nowhere, beating a really good basketball team there in Auburn. But anyways, back to this Joe Burrow. Some cryptic comments, right? Saying, I do have leverage. The Bengals have their process and I have mine. What does that mean? What is your process, Joe Burrow? I don't know. Just cryptic. Whether or not it's just to store or stir up the news and whatnot and topics about him, we don't know. And then actually, the former number 1 overall pick and former Falcon, Steve Bartkowski, reportedly got involved, telling the Burrow family, quote, "I know what it's like to go to a bottom feeder team. I'd hate to see that happen to him. And to be honest, I think he should pull an Eli Manning." Eli Manning famously threatened to not play. I don't see, Bartkowski referenced John Elway. The difference in that situation all the way back, in those days was the fact that John Elway was a 95, 96 mile an hour arm off the bump. Like, the dude could play baseball. The dude was going to be a first-round draft pick. In fact, I think he was drafted by the New York Yankees. So that was his leverage. Kyler Murray's leverage last year, if he didn't want to play in Arizona, or whoever ended up with the number 1 overall pick, was the fact that he was the 8th overall pick or 9th overall pick, I believe it was, by the Oakland Athletics. That is leverage. I don't know what kind of leverage Joe Burrow has other than to go into the combine. Like he said, information still left to be gathered and proved to be a total pissant. Like, that's the only type of leverage I could imagine Joe Burrow having. So when all is said and done, I think this is kind of just noise and background noise, right? But here's the take. This has got me thinking about this today. And whether or not he has leverage, I don't think he does, right? Unless you're a 2-sport athlete, unless you want to wreck the biggest interview of your life on purpose in hopes that a team doesn't draft you, seems rather counterproductive. You don't have any leverage. So here's my take, and here's what I think should, possibly be a remedy to this type of situation. Are you ready? Just do away with the draft. Excuse me, too much coffee in the pre-show meeting. Just do away with the draft. Stop pigeonholing these extremely talented individuals by placing them hostage and rewarding the worst teams in the league with exclusive rights to top prospects. You want entertaining, you want your sport to be talked about even more during the offseason. How about an open market for a Joe Burrow? How about an open market for a Chase Young? And if you want to provide a market advantage, if you want to provide a competitive advantage for the teams that aren't very good, simply provide them with a higher capital for prospects. Give them more money to throw at Joe Burrow. Okay. In other words, allow them to spend more money. Allow the bad teams to spend more money. Do not give them exclusive mandatory rights to these top prospects. Do not reward them with poor play. Okay, we've seen tanking in all other sports. It's not really crept its way into the NFL, but I'm sure the analytics gurus will find their way into that sport. The guy there in Cleveland did it for a couple of years. So it's bound to make its way into the professional ranks in pro football. And I think this would be the most entertaining and, for that matter, most successful and right way to do this, I believe. Again, instead of, pigeonholing these guys, forcing them to go places that they might not want to go, open it up to a total free agency. And I know this isn't likely. It'll probably never happen because the draft is the draft. It's, talked about from basically December until late April. And then even that, it's post-draft reactions, right? Everyone's got to have a take after the draft. But, if Cincinnati wants Joe Burrow in this open market system, you're going to have to pay him more, right? If he wants to take less money to be on a better team and play in a better city, then that's up to him. More power to him, right? For him to make his own decision that way. That's the only way you're going to allow players to truly have leverage. That's the only way that there's a true free market. And I know everyone probably listening to this thinking, why would you do away with the draft? You're just going to make the worst teams worse, the better teams better. Guys, that's free markets. You guys, when you leave college, you're not, or whenever you go searching for job opportunities, they don't force you to go work for X company. No, you're a free agent. You're allowed to go out on the market and explore your value and see, what situations fit you. And guess what? You don't always take the biggest paycheck. You don't always take the automatic starting job or the best, position based off location. No, there's a lot of variety of factors that go into the decisions you make as an individual and as someone going out into your career and your workspace and your work field. Why should it be any different for talented football players? I don't understand this, and talented athletes for that matter. The draft systems to me are just so outdated and so historic that's what everyone thinks they are. They just think they're the right way to do things when in reality, I don't really think they are. Is Cincinnati getting competitively better every single year? Are the Browns that much better for drafting in the top 10 for a decade now? I don't know. It doesn't look like it's not tangible evidence there. In fact, what seems to be the best bet and what seems to be the best way about going about making a successful NFL program and getting together a successful Super Bowl winning roster is to do so through free agency. What does everyone talk about with the New England Patriots? How well and how designed their roster is, despite never having paid a high maintenance guy or never having that one guy outside of Tom Brady. Well, getting rid of the draft doesn't get rid of that. I mean, yeah, the incoming rookies and whatnot would have to go through a free agency process, and New England would probably get a lot more visits than say a Arizona Cardinals team right now. So there would be a competitive disadvantage there. But guess what? Arizona can just probably pay those guys a little bit more in this made up structure that I have created. So instead of having Joe Burrow every single year or the top available quarterback prospect having to come out and make statements about whether or not he wants to play in Cincinnati or whether he agrees or whether he actually has leverage or what he's going to do on draft day when he hears his name called, do away with it. Open up free agency, follow these guys around. You want to talk about interest and you want to talk about compelling. That would be some great stuff. And I agree with Steve Highland right here. We're going to take a little comment right here from Steve off of Facebook. Cincinnati is a bad organization, right? There's no commitment to winning at that organization in the history's past. So if those type of programs continue to exist post this NFL draft that I want to get rid of, they just won't be competitive. They'll continue to wallow around in the muck. There's no sense in rewarding that kind of, performance with the best available player. You don't just get exclusive rights to top talent because you suck. I don't think that's a competitive way and a correct way to go about establishing competitive balance. Don't feed the sick and weary, get rid of them and get a little bit more powerful bodies in there and teams in there for that matter. I'm not saying, this whole idea of bringing in new teams into the NFL would be nuts. And we've kind of gotten long sidetracked since we started with Joe Burrow's comments about whether or not he ends up in Cincinnati. I think he does end up in Cincinnati because, again, he does not have leverage. And that's the way the draft's set up, right? To pigeonhole these guys and to force them into situations where they don't have options, right? The option is to go where you're taking, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, unless you're – I really – going back, I was so young when Eli Manning did his thing and whatever. I literally think it was just a temper tantrum. He just pouted. He basically just said, I'm not going to play, which draft the guy, make him play is what I'm saying. He's not going to go to San Diego and just sit on the pine. I wouldn't imagine he would do that. And if he wants to, golly, that would be a waste of a draft pick. I understand. But it's just, I highly doubt it would ever happen, right? For a quarterback to say, draft me, I'm not going to play, and then actually hold true. How often do these guys, we've only seen one holdout last a full season, and that was with Lev Bell, and look how poorly that turned out, right? I mean, I just don't see it. I don't think it's plausible moving down the road. And unless you're a dual sport athlete, unless you legitimately have future income in another sport, you don't have any leverage. The Cincinnati Bengals are sitting at 1. They sucked their way into that position. They lost their way into that position, and they have exclusive rights to take whoever they want at number 1. And until you change that system, until you remove the incentivization to be bad, it's going to continue to do that. And these guys will still have to answer questions about whether or not they want to play in Cincinnati, okay, or whether they want to play in Cleveland and whatnot. All right, so on to our next topic. If you guys would, while we're taking a quick break and I take a quick breather, show some support over there on the social medias. Georgia did indeed upset Auburn. Final score of 65-55. So a 10-point win there for Georgia at home inside the Steg. On to Mel Kiper's latest mock draft. Like we told you, the big-haired draft wizard from ESPN took 15 guys from the SEC in his latest first-round full mock draft. 5 guys from LSU, 5 guys from Alabama, 2 from the University of Georgia, 2 from Auburn, and 1 South Carolina guy snuck in there, not really snuck in there. Hard to miss that guy, Javon Kinlaw, 6'6", about 320 pounds. One of the more intriguing prospects that I'm wanting to see. I really, really hope he runs his 40 at the NFL Combine. If he goes sub-5, I might, crap a brick to save the language and keep this, PG here. If he goes sub-6 or sub-5, I would be fascinated. And it's going to be something to watch next week in the NFL Combine. But instead of sitting here going through Mel Kiper's full first-round mock, I'll direct you to the Todd McShay and Mel Kiper podcast that they've got. So if you want to take a break and go listen to that full first-round mock, they discuss it over there. We, however, are just going to hit a few talking points, mainly one that I'm rather frustrated and tired of hearing about, to be quite honest. And it is, of course, Andrew Thomas related. But back to Burrow for a quick second. Kiper still thinks he's going number 1, and so do I. Just told you that. It doesn't seem like that much of a drama queen, despite the cryptic comments. I don't think he's going to do any type of holdout or anything crazy like that. And I don't think Cincinnati's stupid enough to pass up on him and take a guy like Tua with the draft risk and the health risks that are present with that situation. Now, that was number 1. 2 was Chase Young. We'll jump right to 3. Tua Tagovailoa in this latest mock draft from Mel Kiper, going 3 to the Detroit Lions. Now, it was stated on ESPN between he and Todd McShay that Mel Kiper might be doing a little thing where he's just putting the name of the player that he thinks is going to go 3 and potentially leave room for a trade later on or on draft day. A team moving into that 3 spot to take Tua ahead of the Giants and the Dolphins there at 5. Giants obviously don't need a quarterback, but they're not going to be moving. I don't think out of that 4th spot they need some type of defensive impact player, or they might. If that guy doesn't take Isaiah Simmons, I would be irate if I were a New York Giants fan. But anyways, back to Chase Young 2, Tua at 3 to the Detroit Lions, right? Which means one or two things. Mel Kiper thinks there is a trade coming down the road, or he thinks the Detroit Lions are potentially out on Matt Stafford. Which would be kind of breaking news. We wrote a little bit of a story about it yesterday on the Bulldog. Maybe you guys can check that out if you haven't seen it already. Matt Stafford had a broken bone in his back last year, missed a handful of games the back half of the season. And, there's some medical concerns about him, just as there are about Tua. So, I don't know if they're ready to move on from Matt Stafford. I certainly wouldn't. He's put together two of his most, efficient seasons in back-to-back years there in the Matt Patricia realm. Not the 4,000, 4,500 yard seasons that he was putting up before, Patricia got there. But once Patricia got there as the head coach, they started running the football more, and they stopped asking Matt to throw it 45 times a game and go out and win football games, more to just control the football and, play, run first, time of possession football, something he's not been used to in his NFL career. So it took a little bit of, time to get used to. And then, as soon as he does, he gets hurt. And now they could be potentially moving on, which, again, I don't quite understand. I know Tua is great, right? Tua could be potentially generational at the quarterback position, but there are far and away too many too many health concerns for me to just be moving on from a perennial Pro Bowler like Matt Stafford to take a wish and a prayer on a guy's medical record that I just don't know there with Tua. So that kind of stood out to me, something that we wrote about, something that I was unaware of, that they were in the quarterback market there in Detroit, and maybe they're not. Maybe it's all smoke signals coming out of the Kiper camp, but you never know. On to my next one, and this is the one we're going to talk about most right here. Andrew Thomas slid all the way down to 18. 18 in this latest mock draft after starting the season, this mock drafting season there in December, right around the 10th spot, right around the 9th spot. OT1 off the board, and it seemed like he was going to be a lock to be the number one tackle off the board following the conclusion of his college career. Now all of a sudden he's tackle number 5 in this latest NFL mock draft from Mel Kiper. What's changed? I don't know, folks. Your guess is as good as mine. I don't think Andrew Thomas can miss. I know it's hard to say that, and everyone can miss. There's going to be flops in these drafts. Again, we've talked about it here on SEC Nightly. Most general managers in the NFL are lucky to go 50-50. Some of the best ones do on their first-round draft picks. But I'm telling you right now, I haven't seen a guy like Andrew Thomas in the sense of just absolutely solid all around. There's not an area of his game where I look at him and say, oh, well, he could probably get substantially better in that area of his game. This is not. I mean, whatever it is there positional versatility? Yes, he can play right and left tackle. Does he have great feet? Yes. Is he an athlete? Can he protect the edge in the NFL? Absolutely 100%. Does he have good hand placement? Yep. Does he have good hat placement? Yep. Is he a leaner in the pass game? Nope. Is he a leaner in the run game? Nope. Can he run block? Absolutely. Can he play in an inside zone scheme? Yep. Has at Georgia. Can he play in the outside zone scheme? Absolutely. Will probably run sub 5 in the 40. I don't know. I really don't understand, folks, how he goes from OT1, Ed Orgeron at SEC Media Day prior to the SEC Championship game, Andrew Thomas's last football game, a game in which he single-handedly shut down Clavon Chasen and that rush pass defense from the LSU Tigers. In that last football game, from that moment, Ed Orgeron said NFL scouts were telling him that guy's a top 5 pick, number 1 tackle off the board. From that moment, he hasn't played another down of collegiate football, hasn't put a single thing on tape from that moment. And he's dropped 4 tackle spots. Why? Again, I don't know. Kiper is one of the best in this business at doing this. He talks to more general managers than probably anybody in this business because he walks around with the mothership on his chest right there with ESPN. If that guy is saying Andrew Thomas is doing this rocket ship fall down these draft boards, I don't understand why. I don't get it. Maybe some of you guys can explain it to me. I don't understand it. I really don't. And it's one thing that really, really bothers me because, look, Josh Jones, the kid out of Houston, had a great Senior Bowl week. That's all fine and dandy. But a great Senior Bowl week and a 4-year career at Houston, after a 4-year career at Houston, it just suddenly makes you a top 15 pick. And over a guy that's been all SEC 3 times, once 1 full season at right tackle as a true freshman, 2 at left tackle as a sophomore and a junior. A good Senior Bowl week suddenly vaults him over Andrew Thomas. Don't get that one. Let's go on to the next one. Who else we got here? Becton, the kid from Louisville. Classic NFL draft Twitter guy. 6'7", 370 pounds. Might as well be the Hakeem Butler of this year's NFL draft. If you guys follow NFL draft Twitter on the Twitter machine, if you don't, it's hilarious. You should go check it out. Never seen so many people with so many hot takes. You will have them all over the world from guys that simply, and I love most of those guys doing it. Some of them just flat out don't know what they're talking about, but they get in this group think, right? Everyone talks about everybody shares their opinions about their draft evaluations and their prospect evaluations and their opinions about their O-tackle list. I've got Wharf's 1. I've got Thomas 2. I've got Will's 3. All this stuff. Everyone puts it out there. And eventually you see enough of these opinions, you get this group think, right? You get, all of these people with similar shared opinions because they've seen them on their timeline, and eventually they sway their own decisions, just like we saw with Hakeem Butler last year on Twitter. Every single guy with an opinion on the draft last year was all over the kid from Iowa State. Where does he go in the draft? Not anywhere near everybody else. Guys out there saying Hakeem Butler was wide receiver 1 last year in the draft. No, it happens. Overdrafting happens. Evaluation happens year in and year out to a prospect every single year. This year, it's Andrew Thomas. Let's talk about the 2 guys that I think are legitimately in his class, that are legitimately the value of tackle that you're going to find in Andrew Thomas, and that's Wharf's there from Iowa, and the Wills kid, the Jedrick Wills kid from Alabama. I think both of them are fantastic. Both of them are very, very similar to Andrew Thomas, very, very light on their feet. We call them dancing bears. Don't Google those. That's not the right term, but in the football world, that's what they are. Big guys that are light on their feet, look like dancing bears out there on the edge. As for Wharfs and Wills, I don't really understand, the drafting them over Andrew Thomas, and here's why. Thomas has shown the ability, like we showed you, the versatility at the tackle position to be able to play right and left tackle. Wills and Wharfs are guys that have spent multiple years there at the right tackle position. Are they athletic enough to make it a slide over to left tackle? 100%. Do they have the ability to be a career-long left tackle in the NFL? 100%. But the fact of the matter is, if you're going to take a tackle in the top 10, that sucker better be able to play day one at the left tackle position or wherever you expect him to end up in his career. Okay. Offensive linemen in particular, when you draft them that high, they have to make an impact on your team year one, no matter what. And if that it is at right tackle for Wills and Wharf. So whoever drafts them, if they leave them at right tackle, to immediately get them on the field and let them accommodate to the NFL speed before they make them switch over to left tackle in year 2, all fine and dandy. I'm just telling you right now, Thomas is going to be able to walk in and do it day one on both sides. So that type of versatility to me is invaluable. If you're checking boxes and everybody checks the same boxes except for the last one, and we're splitting hairs because that's what we are. We're talking about going 9 or going 18 or going 6 or going 18. We're literally talking about splitting hairs in the NFL draft. That's what we're talking about. That's the type of deep dive evaluation you're going to have to end up getting into to make the correct decision on this. Bottom line, I've talked about it for 6 or 7 minutes here, and you probably can tell I am very adamant about this opinion. Andrew Thomas is offensive tackle 1, and that has nothing to do with my covering of the Georgia Bulldogs. If you guys haven't figured out by now, not really a fan. I'm not a fan of anybody. I'm just someone who covers the sport and someone who legitimately believes my opinions on the offensive line in particular, because I played it for quite some time, are valuable. Okay, I do know a little bit of something about that position. I don't really miss on those. I'll miss on the corners. I can't sit here and tell you I can break down corner tape with the best of the people out there breaking down corner tape. I know the fundamentals and all that good stuff, but I don't know the intricacies and the deeps, ins and outs of the game and of the position. But when it comes to offensive line play, 1,000% can get that done and get it done correctly. And again, that's the bottom line. All right, last little take here on Mel Kiper's draft, and I don't mean to take a shot here at Clavon Chasen, but I kind of am. I understand Chasen can run the hoop. For those of you who don't know, that means he can bend around the edge, right? He can run the hoop. Defensive linemen practice around this big hula hoop, and they literally practice bending the edge and ripping around or offensive tackles running that edge. He can really run the hoop. I understand that he's a quote-unquote twitchy pass rusher, and I understand he is the modern outside linebacker. But I'm sorry, 9.5 career sacks in 26 games in 17 starts isn't quite 14th overall production when it comes to the NFL draft. First round, 14th pick for a guy who's going to be absolutely the epitome of a underwear superstar. He is going to go, I'm telling you right now, next week at the NFL Combine, there's a couple names you're going to hear about. You're going to hear about the kid, Becton from Louisville, because he is going to measure in at 6'7", 370 pounds, and he might go 5'1" or 5'2" in the 40, and people will think it's impressive, and he might do 225 45 times over there on the bench press. You're going to hear Clavon Chasen's name, okay? Because the guy's going to measure in at 6'4.5", 255 pounds, 245 pounds-ish, and he's going to run 4.65. And everyone's going to be talking about his three-cone shuttle. And everyone's going to be talking about how he vertical leaped a 42-inch and all that good stuff. What I'm telling you is the production does not match the profile. I don't understand why. It's something we saw with Rashawn Gary, right? Rashawn Gary's production did not match his profile. He went out there at almost damn near 300 pounds and ran, 4.7-ish last year at the NFL Combine. Looked freakish. Everybody wanted to take him in the first round, and they end up did. I believe Green Bay took him 12. With Zadarian Smith and Preston Smith still on the roster, how'd that pay off? Not quite great right now, okay? The measurables are going to be there. The guy's going to blow it out of the water. But I always wonder, I always get scared off, especially with pass rushers, when the production doesn't match the profile. You don't really have a top 10, top 15 pick, in my opinion. Now, one edge rusher out of the SEC whose production did match his pro and more, Josh Allen from Kentucky. What did he do? Quietly had one of the best rookie seasons in a pass rusher we've seen in quite some time. Would have walked away with the Rookie of the Year voting had Nick Bosa not been out there in San Francisco doing his thing. So, again, Clavon Chasen, not here to take a shot at you. Think he is a first-round talent. Think he will end up being drafted in said first round as a first-round talent. But, again, I get scared off when the production does not match the profile, and that's exactly what we're going to see here from Clavon Chasen. You're going to hear a lot about him in the next coming weeks because of what he will likely do there at the NFL Combine. He's going to blow it out of the water. I'm going to tell you that right now. And everyone's going to be saying, Brooks, what's up with the hot take? Clavon Chasen, not that great. Just forewarning you, going to be an underwear superhero. Production doesn't match the profile. All right, on to our last topic of the night. Saved it for last because it's a little bit of, hypotheticals. This is the offseason. Hypotheticals are what media people like me do in the offseason. They talk about FPI and preseason rankings and all that good stuff. Well, the latest one came out. The latest preseason football power index rankings from ESPN are shaping up to apparently make it look like, some type of, down year, if you will, for the SEC. I don't quite foresee it, but apparently the football power index folks do. Let's read off the top 10 for you. Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Bama at 4, Penn State, Wisconsin, Texas at 7. Texas constantly gets the preseason love. I'll never understand it other than the fact that they're one of the biggest national programs in the country, and I guess that's why they always get love. A&M at 8. I'll talk about A&M here in a second. Notre Dame at 9. Georgia rounding out the top 10 there at 10. Florida, LSU, USC at 13, which is a little bit surprising. Again, national powerhouse, national brand, probably going to get love from national media people such as ESPN. Tennessee there at 19. Who else from the SEC? That is it from the SEC. So Auburn there at 15 as well. So a handful of SEC schools rounding out the top 25. But typically in these preseason polls, we see 4 or 5, maybe 6 sometimes SEC schools in that top 10 ranking. This year, only 3. And most of them on that back end, right? Georgia at 10, which is a lot lower than the AP preseason ranks, which has them, I believe, at 5th or 6th. Then you got A&M at 8 and Oklahoma at 4, Alabama at 4. Those color schemes, man, they get me. Anyways, so on to this A&M stuff. I've talked about it here on SEC Nightly before. I'm not here for the A&M preseason hype. I understand everyone thinks Jimbo Fisher is and he is. He's a national championship winning coach. He's got a ring and got a title, all that good stuff. He also had Jameis Winston, one of the best single seasons at the quarterback position outside of Cam Newton and Joe Burrow from last year that we've ever really seen. And they walked. That FSU team in 2012, 2013, whenever it was flat out dominant. I mean, it would go down. I mean, point margin and all that good stuff would go down as one of the more dominant football teams ever. I don't really understand this FBI stuff and the SEC being a down year, but you kind of get it, right? I understand it a little bit because the quarterbacks are gone. All the top quarterbacks in the conference are leaving and departing. So, and speaking of leaving and departing, we have passed our 30-minute threshold. My wife's downstairs watching, I believe, Survivor. at this point if it's not over already. It might be a 2-hour premiere, so I'm stuck here in the studio. But we will send you out the way we brought you in, and that's with the best intro and outro music in the industry, our hip-hop instrumental number 2, as they call it, over there at freefilemusicsarchives.com. Shout out to those fine folks. But here you go, folks. We will see you next time. Appreciate you for being here, man. Show us some support on your way out. Give us those thumbs ups. Give us those subscribes on YouTube. We'll be breaking down Jalen Carter film tonight, comparing him to Aaron Donald, NFL Player of the Year last couple of years. How about that tease for you, folks, as I send you out? Let you know that by time tomorrow morning comes around and you go to check your social media feeds, you will have a film breakdown from yours truly on my YouTube channel of Jalen Carter and Aaron Donald, side by side, guy by guy. It's going to be good stuff. I promise. You should look forward to it. Put me on alerts over there on YouTube so you never miss it. As soon as I put something up, you will get the lowdown. We will see you guys next time, which will be tomorrow. SEC Nightly, folks. We do it Monday through Friday here in the studio. We'll see you next time.